All right, the next part of this process is doing the wash. So you're going to put a gallon of isopropyl, 99.9%, in the bucket with the pound of pulverized cannabis. You're going to let it sit in there for about 5 minutes, stirring it. After 5 minutes, you're going to see I got something in there. I got to get in there and empty that out. You want to make sure that this bucket's clean because this is going to be your clean bucket. So you're going to strain everything out. I'm using a hemp bag, but this is what I use to strain stuff. You're going to strain everything out into this bucket. You're going to take what's left after you squeeze it out. You're going to dump it back in there, and you're going to add your other gallon into there and do a second wash, and then repeat straining it. And then this right here is going to be for our last step. Well, one of the last steps. So stay tuned. All right, after you do your 2 washes, this is what you're left with. It's about, a little less than 2 gallons, whatever you've wasted or spilled. And then from here, we're going to dump it into this rice cooker. It's a 4-quart rice cooker. I'm going to turn this fan on. It's going to blow off the top so none of the fumes get over here towards the energy source. My wind is blowing in the direction of the fan, so it's not blowing back and then coming across. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to dump this into that. It's probably about around right here. And then once it gets down to around here, then I'm going to fill it up some more and just continue that process, and then I'll show you what it looks like towards the end. Okay, we're getting down towards the end here, if you can see that. So what you're going to have to do at this point is just kind of rock it back and forth, because there's still some alcohol in there. There's still isopropyl sitting in there, and I can smell it. And then also too, when it starts to bubble up like that, if it starts popping, you need to move it around. Like hold both sides down so your this thing down here doesn't go over to off. So if you hold it here and here and swish it around until you get most of that alcohol out of there, and you got one more step after this. Okay, so we are literally at the last phase of this. So when I got it down to where you saw it, I shook it around a little bit more to where I felt it was as enough smoke was coming off of it that didn't smell like alcohol. So I was like, okay, we'll take it off. I brought it in, emptied it into this, and so you see this was pretty much empty. It's quite a bit in there. So what I'm going to do now is take this, put it into a 245 degree oven to finish it. And so any remaining alcohol that's in there, or water or anything else, will bubble. When it stops bubbling, then you know you're done. And at that point, you would pull it out, let it cool for a few, and then start drawing up your syringes with the medicine. I suggest having a heat thermometer here. As you can see, what does this say? So 59 degrees, 59.4. It makes things a lot easier. So I'll get it in the oven and I'll monitor the temperature. When it gets to 240, I'll leave it at that temperature. And since I didn't decarb this before I made the RSO, before I washed it, it does get to 240 towards the end of your of it being in the rice cooker, but I don't felt like it got enough. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this in here at 240 for 30 minutes so it decarbs it. And then after that, I'll pull it out and then I'll draw up my syringes and I'll show you what the end product is. Always have some isopropyl, 99.9%. When you're working with any of this stuff, it helps to cut You know what I mean? You can spray it on your hands and it, rub out the stickiness, and then draw it up with a paper towel and then wash your hands. That's usually what I do, but always keep this stuff around. I used the last of the gallons that I had, so I got to order some more. This shit ain't cheap, so make sure you're making it worth your while making this. Making this isn't cheap either. I mean, it takes a pound of flour to make just this, and so I would say there's probably about 20, minimum of 23-gram syringes in here. So it's not bad. 20, so 30, almost an ounce, maybe more than an ounce. I didn't weigh it, so my scale doesn't go that high. I'm cheap. I didn't want to buy a new one. So, anyways, I'll be back to show you the finished product after it's drawn up. All right, at this point, I've gotten my temperature pretty much where I want it. It's dropping down. It's around 240. It'll drop back down. There's no bubbling happening here, so it's just oil, and right now what we're doing is decarbing it. So I've got my timer set. You set your timer once you hit 240, not as you get to 240. And there's about a 10-degree discrepancy between the temperature of the oil and the temperature that I have it set at. I put it at 250, and then it brought the oil up to 244, 245, 246. I brought it back down to 245, and it should keep it around 235. And then when the element kicks back on, it'll bring it up to 44 and then drop it back down. So it's right around in that range. So it's not too hot. I'm going to got that for 30 minutes. What I've done here is I've got my stuff prepped for when I come and set the hot oil down here. I'll have a heating pad, or what do they call that? A cooking thing to set it on so it doesn't burn my table. But I've got these already set up. This is all I have left, so I need to order some more. I get them off of Amazon. They're 3 ml, so 3-gram syringes. Draw them up with this little tip right here, and then cap them with these little ones right here. All right. Oh, also too, what I do, because when you're doing this process and you don't have any alcohol to burn off of it, it thickens it up a little bit. So and then once it dries in these, it becomes really difficult to push it out. I don't know if you've ever gone to a dispensary and gotten RSO, and you're like trying to get it through. You can't get it through without heating it up, which you're heating up plastic, which is, probably not good for you. So what I do is I'll throw a half a teaspoon of infused coconut oil into it and mix it up right as I get it out. And in that way, it loosens the consistency up. It doesn't cut the potency down, because I use 6 ounces in my recipe for my coconut oil. So I've got 10 cups, and I put 6 ounces into it, infused. So I'm not taking away from any of the potency of the oil itself. So when I get back, I'll show you what the finished product's going to look like. Okay, so we're right out of the oven, and there's hardly any bubbling going on at all. If there is, they're super tiny, so almost all of this stuff is out and safe for consumption. So 219. We were at 240 for a while. We went up to 250 to 260. I thought most of this was boiled off, but I started seeing it bubbling up, and so I was like, oh, good thing I did it. So I'll show you what the end syringes are going to look like. Okay, here's the finished product. We've got 3 full grams per syringe of cannabis oil. And only 1 small bubble in each of them. So it's pretty much a